for joining me today. I think that we'll just jump right into it. I had the opportunity as Chancellor to see the things that go on campus all the time, day in, day out. But this came across my desk, the International Conference on Spirituality here, and I thought that maybe I might want to share some notes, and I so appreciate you all for joining here today. So today we're going to be talking about something that's very important to me. I sort of came up through football, and I started meditating, performance maximization kind of thing, and then I sort of just kept on going deeper and deeper and deeper. Ended up putting the let's say, the 4 Buddhist values: compassion, loving kindness, equanimity, and joy at the center of my heart. And then it kept going deeper. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's see if this plays. It's always one of those things. Is it connected to the internet? And it's always sad. This is, I have a lot of video content, and this was supposed to be my opener.
Well, while you're doing that, I'm just going to let you know that the presentation that's supposed to be in here after, we're moving somewhere else, so you have as much time as you want.
Oh, that's actually a dangerous thing. Okay, so it looks like because I only have 2 YouTube plays in here, but this was an introduction to me on football. And it also talked about this one day I was over at the medical campus, and they take me writing a bunch of equations on the wall. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Axiomatic spirituality, evolving through disruption. I've been through so many different kinds of things in my life, and you all get to see really the first time I'm sharing some of the inner things that I was going through, and not just the stuff on the outside. But we're in a world with constant disruption. Things are going on, things are happening all the time. With the rise of AI, we're seeing more and more potential changes on the horizon that will be incredibly disruptive. But I think I gained a lot of insights in my life, starting off math and physics early age. I had this book of a book of calculus that I studied when I was 8 years old. I needed some help on figuring out what some of the symbols meant. But then I started sort of understanding. I think what we're going to be talking about today is sort of digging into that. So we got something. There we go. Beautiful. Who here knows what a megastructure is? This is a Matryoshka brain, right? Nested solar panel collectors surrounding the sun. And it's a place that humanity might be going. And that's what I build my entire life towards. I've been obsessed with the future since day one. I like to think of myself as a 4-dimensional thinker. And today we're going to be exploring just that, how timeless spiritual insight and modern science are converging as we speak. And I've sort of created 3 axioms. And I say axiom, and it's like, these things aren't based off of my belief. These are scientific facts and my personal journey through logic, meditation, and ethics. But let's dig right into the axioms off the bat. So when we talk about patterns, right? Interdependence, symmetry. You guys have probably come across these in your time. But my primary thing here, it's really sort of that these are they don't reflect on religion. They don't matter in any sort of way, except you can put them just a little bit deeper than your values. When I talk about universal pattern, reality is governed by hidden structures, right? So universal pattern, numerics, right? So number theory is a very interesting thing. When you talk about primes and stuff, there's actually a lot of spirituality that can be found just in those numbers. But we're talking about the relationships, the interdependence, that nothing is really by itself. And also we'll be talking about symmetry and asymmetry. So these are all based off of basically, the laws of physics, interdependence, right? I mean, that's almost self-evident, and symmetry and asymmetry. So we'll be digging into these throughout today's conversation. We actually expand upon these ideas into a little bit more digestible way. But when we think about sort of universal pattern, I'm a big believer in sort of understanding what's going on in the world. Science has proven to be a big piece of this for us, but there's also like all kinds of philosophical elements that come into play, right? Unity of existence. Unfortunately, I can't control what this is doing. So unity of existence, like that's the expansion of this, that we're all one. The things that we do to each other are sort of just, I do want to stick on this page. Boolean logic a framework, so we'll be touching on these things. Let's expand them now. Young age, right? I'm a black kid, only black kid in my elementary school, right? I had 3 siblings older than me. I had a number of parents that came through, tertiary parents kind of thing. I started understanding that I was part of something, and the words that were used could affect others. And some people hear things and they do things to others. Like, we're all sort of in this connected space. And so this led me sort of into this lifetime of spirituality. Let's talk about Spinoza's monism. Unfortunately, I have to resync this here every time. So Benedict Spinoza, in the 17th century philosopher, believed that all of reality is one unified substance, like a God or nature kind of thing. And everything is connected and is essentially the same essence. Centuries later, scientists confirmed that the universe did begin as one, the Big Bang, right? And so when we talk about Lamarck's Big Bang theory, everything we see today came from that one singular event. Some people think of it as a singular point. Science is still iterating on that. But I think this is a very important one for me. When we talk about compassion, right? Like, if we are all one, then the way I treat you is effectively the way I treat myself. So it's a whole speech that I get paid to give talking about values. It's very important to me to really enforce the fact that we really can change the world by just helping others just one step at a time. I gotta go back, no. So when we talk about see, this just crushed ahead of me. And it sucks to not have it here. So when we talk about, I just want to give me this. No. That's just how it goes. So we'll just continue then. So when we talk about the code of reality, like binary mysticism, Wheeler's it from bit, the Platonic realm. You guys heard of any of these things? Like, these are all, like, quite often philosophers, physicists become philosophers at the end of their time. So Boole's binary mysticism stresses that the groundwork of digital computing was sort of laid out way before we ever had computers. When we talk about the Wheeler's it from bit, it reframes that sort of quantum mechanics is about physical things. It from bit is the idea that we are all information, right? Who here knows what the quantum wave function is? No? Okay. Yeah, so the particle wave duality. So basically, there's a point in time where they figured out that the quantum realm is very different than our physical realm. When we talk about the quantum realm, we can't I can say, I know where this cup of water is, right? I know where it is because I can see it. The photons hit it and it reflects into my eye. Once you get into the quantum realm, all of a sudden you're dealing with, if I bump this with my detector, my photon or electron, right, I can no longer tell where it is. And so when we talk about the information element, when you get into the quantum spaces, you actually have Schrodinger's uncertainty principle, right? You can't tell exactly where something is and where it's going at the same time. Right? And that's the basis of this principle, it from bit. And then Penrose's Platonic realm, he believed that there was an idea that, or let's say he believed that math as an idea exists in its own place. And the more I've dug into math, even just CFA related stuff, chartered financial analyst stuff, work stuff, like, you start to see like some of these relationships almost exist in a different plane. You have simple arithmetic, right? But then you have these other things that explain reality. When we talk about something as simple as E equals mc squared, right? Like, energy equals mass. And so from there you get Schrodinger's equations. From Schrodinger's equations you can start predicting the existence of different, let's say, subatomic particles. But when I want to talk about this, it's one of those things that I'll dig into just a little bit more. So Penrose talked about algebraic geometry, twistor theory. That was something he made but that these mathematical objects are as real as the things we're made of. The two worlds thesis, where there's actually this mathematical world and there's our world. But when we talk about interdependence, we're actually getting to a place where it starts to make a little bit of sense. So when we talk about interdependence, ecological webs, economic networks, social media algorithms, in physics, this is the real key. And this lies at the very heart of physics. Noether's theorem basically says symmetries are physical conservation laws. So energy is a conserved quantity. Momentum is a conserved quantity. Charges, right? And it's basically that there's always an equation that can create anything. So when I say that, I mean, obviously physical equations, cool. But we have economic equations as well. We have financial equations, right? I can tell you what your mortgage is going to cost. Is that a man-made thing, a human-made thing, or is it something deeper than that, where the time value of money is actually real? And so when we talk about today's global challenges, and when we talk about climate change, like I can put out all the CO2 I want. I can't see it. It's not going to affect anybody else. But a lot of people don't understand the effect. That simple thing, emission of carbon dioxide, or just really anything you do, how that can affect others. And I think one of the things we'll get to is how truth actually affects others as well. Our pathway back to collective resilience is where we're going to get to. So when we talk about this axiom, no element exists in isolation. All nodes are interrelated. When I talk about this, and when I expand upon it, there's that belief and empirical truth and shared truth for cohesion. So who's talked to somebody that doesn't have the same fact set that you do? And it's really hard to actually communicate with them. Anybody have any American Republican friends or conservative friends? Like, these are real things, right? And when you can't agree on the facts, how can you have a society, right? There's a element here I think a lot of people don't really see. Like, if we can't agree on the facts, then there's not much we can agree with. And so I was called black when I was young. Do I look black to you? I know this is safe space, guys. Do I look black to you guys?
Yes. Just melanated.
Melanated, okay. Okay, melanated. You aren't melanated. But the idea is that I wasn't black, I wasn't white. I was born the way I was. My mom was black, my dad was black, my mom was white. I went to school and I was called some names, not really significantly, but the thing that actually stuck out to me the most was when I got to high school. I was called Oreo. Black on the outside, white on the inside. And I knew none of this was true. I was raised, my father wasn't really around. I had my older siblings who were white, my mom who was white. These people helped me become who I am. But that's where I sort of started to see a disconnect, that there's things people can say that aren't real. And when we talk about fact from narrative, I've been a person that's really tried to push myself hard to be the best I can be in all different areas. And when we sort of want to live in this sort of factual, this narrative space, and we all love our own story. You know, that didn't work out for me because of X, Y, Z. I got this excuse for that, this, that, and that. One of the key pieces I found is that if you can actually just start with the data, it's one of those things that's super important. I talk to entrepreneurs all the time, and I ask them, you started up a company, like, what data did you base your thesis for your company off of? Quite often they say, no, I wanted to do something, right? So you don't build a product and then try to sell it. You do your research, you gather your data, you get the facts. So when we talk about that, Kant's whistle versus God, like, a priori categories is what Kant emphasizes. Space and time as the lenses of the mind, which shows that our given framework is participatory, not passive. So if we want to actually move forward in life, we want to build ourselves, we want to have a better life or whatever, you can't do that by theory crafting. You can't do it by just taking steps towards this thing that, I know there's certain roles you can play in life that are wholly fictitious. Who wants to be a social media magnate? Social media person? No? Nobody does. But a lot of people do, right? You're getting a job off of pretty much nothing. But when we talk about Buddha's come and see, right? Like, this is the thing. If your evidence, I can see it for myself, hey, great. That's why I think Buddhism is so important and why they really stress, no, it's not about you just making a call, it's like, no, that's true and this isn't. Buddhism invites you to see it for yourself. Look at, like Buddha was just like, hey, meditation's the way. He doesn't need to prove it. Come and see, try it for yourself. And when we talk about the critique of illusion, belief without evidence as mental fiction, I asked in the room, because I was, when I was building the speech, I was conscious of it. Like, am I going to say something that's inappropriate? Because if you have belief without evidence, what is that? Faith. So I'm not trying to offend anybody here, but this is where that sort of idea comes from, is that anchoring the ideas that you're trying to build from in evidence, and then you can sort of build from that. But when I get there, we talk about Galileo Galilei. Who knows Galileo? Okay, so we know some scientists here. He was this freedom to assert a truth, an unpopular truth that the earth wasn't the center of the universe. He trusted his evidence over dogma, demonstrating that the truth remains a truth whether or not people believe it. And this captures our next axiom: objective truth exists independent of perception. And that's what I seek, truth, right? Like, I can't be investing in a company that's fake. I have my client's money that needs to not go to zero. And in contrasting that, beliefs can be fickle and culturally dependent. I saw a book yesterday in the meeting where I saw some of these same principles applied specifically to a sort of a Western dogma. And it's interesting to see how truth has changed, how now we're dealing with truths that sort of have an ideological tilt to them. One of my principles, truth stands without questioning, where belief merely tolerates it. When we align ourselves with truth, then we start to move in harmony. And there's a harmony that comes with truth that is sort of indescribable. So with these guys, these are UCalgary students. I was down at the stadium having a meeting with one of my bosses. And there was a bunch of students on the field. It's like, what are they doing? I asked. And it's like, oh, we're going to put on a football camp. It's like, oh, I'll put them through the camp. So taught them football, taught them how to catch, throw, and tackle. They said they were cool with tackling each other. So they did. They tackled each other and they learned all about the game. And then we gave them tickets. So this is the top corner. You can actually see it over there. They came to the game and they knew what was going on. Right? They weren't. Every single one of these people had been in Canada for all of 2 weeks before this football game, and they'd never seen a football game before, right? But because, this is the end of the game, they were all still there because they understood what was going on. There was a shared truth there. They were part of the game because they knew what was going on. It wasn't like they were just looking around. What's going on? They had a great time, and I was so happy. We got the whole crew. I got lots of other pictures with these guys, but there was a certain element that I wanted to make sure that they had. They knew what was going on. Show up to the game, have a great time. And we talk about shared truth. It's part of our collective conscious, right? Like those things I've been saying. If we can agree on a few things, then potentially we can agree on more. I dreamt on truth on politics. So she stressed her distinction between factual truth and moral truth. How totalitarian regimes can weaponize falsehood to destroy the public realm. We're seeing this firsthand in the States, right? Is a person an illegal immigrant, or are they just a person? When we talk about Durkheim, mechanical versus organic solidarity, how pre-modern societies had rituals. They had songs, right? They shared, they reconciled. When even just we had a really nice land acknowledgement yesterday. Here at Mokahinsis, people would come, share stories, trade, because they had that unifying thing. We're all in this together, because they had those fundamental underlying beliefs shared. And then there's a good enough religious naturalism, science-based narrative as cultural glue. And this is an interesting one. Good enough described the epic of evolution, a framework of secular mythos that can unite cultures around a science-based origin story, filling the void left by fractured religious narratives. Aristotle believed that humans are social animals. We thrive in communities, and for community or civilization to function, there has to be that common ground of understanding. Shared belief is the bedrock of trust, cooperation, and progress. Think of everyday examples, right? So, who here has blown through a red light, right? It means stop, guys, come on. But there's other things we accept scientific facts, and this is the big problem for the States and in this province right now, where we have babies being born with measles, because germ theory is no longer, for certain quarters in power, an accepted fact. Our axiom here is that truth, when shared, unites. And history shows that when fundamental facts are rejected, our groups start to have their own truths. That's when societies start to go the wrong direction. And Enlightenment thinkers, John Locke, Thomas Jefferson, recognize this. That's why the Declaration of Independence starts with, "We hold these truths as self-evident." It's a declaration of shared truths as the basis for a new nation. And today, truth is a social contract, right? When somebody shares misinformation online, it can go a lot further than just having an internet argument. And so when we talk about symmetry and asymmetry, I was raised in the church. My mom was an Anglican priest. And I took a lot of Eastern religion when I was in college. I thought that I would have let me see what I'm going to believe. But unfortunately, I have an illustration of me breaking symmetry on this defense, but we're not going to be able to watch it today. But when we talk about symmetry and asymmetry, it actually goes back to that idea that we had about equations. Right? Transformation arises when symmetry is broken. Right? I'm like I said, physics is sort of where I started this from. The religious stuff came after. Transformation arises when symmetry is broken. And when I talk about transformation, that's what I've experienced throughout my life. When I started meditating, it was a game changer. It was like, oh, this is what I wanted to do. This is what I knew I could do. I knew this sort of level of conscious functioning was there. And so I continued down that path. I started off with just, yoga, and then a little bit of meditation, and vipassana, and then I started getting into far, far more sort of serious meditation. In mathematics and physics, symmetry breaking explains phase transitions. Water to ice, magnetism and metals, the Higgs mechanism, this is the thing that gives us mass. In biology, symmetry breaking drives embryonic development. It can go one way or the other, and sometimes in between. Spirituality, the moment of awakening, feels like a rupture in perception. And ethically, justice arises when we interrupt patterns of oppression. Recognition of growth depends on asymmetry helping us embrace, right? For me, I could have been the football player that just did what he was told. And I get called into the office of my head coach 1 year into my time at the University of Kansas. Calls me in there and he's like, "John, you're uncoachable." It's like, "What? Why?" "You ask too many questions." Right? And it was those very questions that helped me become who I am today. I had my coaching staff there that eventually made one change, so I had a coach that was actually in my corner as a running backs coach, Coach Earl Mosley. And he said to me, it's like, "John, ask away." He answered all my questions. That year that he came, I got the team MVP. Repeated the following year. Right? When you're able to sort of break the way things are done, that creates opportunity. Right? We talk about Facebook. Google, like anybody that's shown up at that time where that need is there, it's a symmetry break. So Vipassana, neuroscientist Sarah Lazar's fMRI studies showed meditators showed thicker cortical thickening and enhanced connectivity in attention networks. Really, what I would explain this to you as, there's a level of, who here has been in the zone before? You guys know the zone? Who? Let's see some hands. Who's been in the zone? Okay. So when you're on the football field, the best performance you get is when you aren't thinking about it. You aren't getting in your own way. That's how I would briefly explain it. But the things that need to be get done. I never had a problem after I started understanding. As I meditated more, I started to understand what the zone was more, so I could actually find that place before every game. And we talk about gamma wave research. So this is digging right into it. So gamma waves, your brain puts off 4 waves. Gamma waves are one of them. Gamma waves are the nice one. They indicate that you're in a very nice state of mind, very open, flexible, and easy. And so gamma wave synchronicity correlates with moments of sudden insight and problem solving, those aha moments. And when we talk about ITT, you guys know integrated information theory, right? Let's see some hands. I got okay. So integrated information theory basically says that what we see as consciousness, what we believe as this, is actually the output of all the different information pieces, our brain, our physical body, all these different pieces come together, our memories. So let's talk about this. So the Buddha taught that much of human suffering comes from the illusions of the mind, our false assumptions, unchecked fears, and feeling of separateness from others. He offered a remedy in the form of mindfulness and meditation. Through meditation, one learns to observe the experiences impartially that you have and seeing them as passing sensations rather than letting the reactive stories take over. In this way, we can distinguish from raw facts from the mind's own distorted narrative of how those things sort of work. When we talk about integrated information theory, like information integration often is interfered with because we have our own narrative that we want to be true. And one of the key things I've done in my life is just let it go. There's no narrative of my life, right? We'll get into it eventually, but what you see is what you get. That when you can align everything on the inside with what's on the outside, that's when you really are integrated. But these things all are part of insight states. I talk about insight states. I had a few spiritual awakenings. First one as a kid, second one as a professional player. I thought there was an opportunity to go even deeper. Right? What happens when I keep going down this path? Right, where you come across the Buddhist values, right? And you're really going to drill down on it. I'm going to keep doing it. So the intercession. I thought, oh yeah, okay, so that's what's wrong. Yeah, they don't have my fonts. The intercession is an idea, or exactly as it says, action of intervening on another person's behalf. The reason why I'm the chancellor of this university is because I did. We all should. It's not popular. But when you intercede, you do something for somebody else, unasked. In our case with the Calgary Black Chambers, my wife was like, yo, John, I'm trying to stop volunteering at all these random spots. I want to do something for myself. And just do something for yourself, John. So we looked at the data, and the data showed that black people in Calgary had 3 times the rate of childhood poverty as everybody else. A black person working the same job as somebody else got paid $20,000 less. And the worst one, there is 97% of black students think they can graduate university. Only 50% have the means to do so, financial means to do so. So we thought we should do something. And I like this one. So we did, right? I ran up to random black people on the street, well-dressed black people. Say, we're going to get together at the Calgary Petroleum Club, because I was a member. Brought a bunch of black people in. What are we going to do? Well, let's help the kids. Let's directly mentor them, right? So we physically go to the schools and talk about our program, a program I created myself, because hey, you just got to do something when you got to do it. And then that led to me presenting at the legislature, which then got us to recognize John Ware. Anybody know who John Ware is here-ish? So John Ware was a cowboy back in the 1800s, but he was black during that time. There was numerous landmarks around this city, around Laurel, Alberta, called N. John Creek, N. John Mountain, N. John Valley. Yeah, we got that changed in 2006. In 2006, they finally dropped the N part. But he is now one of Canada's most recognized people. This is a Parks event that we all hosted. These are a bunch of leaders of the chambers and Courtney Walcott's from the city. And then, we put 300 kids through the program. These kids changed. Somebody did something for them, right? So the kids in our program are from the Catholic School Board. And unfortunately, because we allowed everybody to join, we had less black kids in our program than we would have liked, but we still put 300 through. We got the Friends of Education Award, which led to me getting top 40, and then eventually becoming chancellor. Right? And there's a lot of distinguished people. My boss, Black Chambers, my other boss from the Calgary Flames, Daniel Smith, senior advisor, Chief Crowchild, head of the Calgary Chamber of Commerce. Like, people showed up, but I didn't ask them to. I just helped. And I think that was the most important thing for me, because this is what the reason why I wanted to come today, the participatory universe, right? That we aren't anything separate. There's nothing inside of us that is separate from here. Now, I know we talk about souls and those things, but I think sometimes, like, the sense for, what's the word for going to sort of, what would I say? Like, let's say, life after death. Nobody wants to die, right? So it's nice to have a story. But I stick here. I am in a world where I can affect change now. So Wigner and Wheeler, they note that early quantum pioneers like von Neumann, London Bauer, also speculated on the consciousness' role in measurement, creating lineage here, as well as Jung's, we know Jung, right? Carl Jung. Yeah. Jung's idea of, Jung's stuff, some of it's like sort of crank, but he had this one world concept, that a psychological ground lies in both mind and matter as one. And then, we got Hoffman. Reality is an interactive consciousness network. So, Hoffman said conscious agents basically exchange this idea called Markovian kernels, mathematical rules describing interactions, suggesting that space-time and objects emerge from those exchanges. Like we said, are we separated, or are we physically separated, or are we mentally separated? Like, some of these things are just matters of opinion. Carl Sagan said, talking about our place in the universe, and that we should have reverence for it. He reminded us that science itself can be a spiritual experience, filling us with awe. In 1994, envisioned a new kind of religion that stressed the magnificence of the universe as revealed by modern science, one that could draw forth reserves of reverence and awe. And this is why I wanted to put this together today. It's one of those things I'm still working on and stuff, and of course technology issues as well. But who has seen the image, pale blue dot? 1, 2, 3, no, 1, 2. So this is a picture of Earth, and it's the first picture of Earth, really putting it in its place in the universe. The idea that we aren't anything.
Thank the storm for that.
Oh, that's everything. That's everything. Yeah.
Keep talking. Okay, blue dot.
Quite the timing.
Yeah, really.
Well, the truth is, like, you know, we're humans. Like, we built up this entire civilization in this place. You know, Mokahinsis, Calgary, Canada, the world. Because we're here and we've sought to improve ourselves. And when I think about scientific progress, we're in a place now where, is there a paradigm shift? Like, do you need God if there's an AI that will take its place? Right? And that's a rhetorical question, right? When you teach something the entire history of humanity, what is that thing? So, Carl Sagan talked about a cosmological truth that underscored the responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and cherish the only home we've ever known. In other words, a true understanding of the universe's enormity. Right? I've barely touched the surface today about what some of these concepts that, the physical concepts. But the goal of today was to really embrace wonder and hope that it inspires empathy. I mean, like, you know, it's always interesting when technological issues, whatever issues come in the way. But the universe is roughly about 13.8 billion years old. And with each scientific new discovery, particles, galaxies, each new insight into life, we have the opportunity to deepen our reverence. And that's sort of what I'm working towards here, is an ontology. So I might have a religious that says, okay, we have this 7 circles, and 7 circles create all life, whatever. An ontology that I'm trying to build is based off of facts. And I think we can get to a point where we have shared facts, scientific facts that we can all agree on, and build our entire society up from that. The truth is, we already have. There's ideas, this is God's nation or this or that. But when I think of God, I really feel that we're in a place where, like, the traditional anthropomorphic God is sort of passé, a more all-encompassing, that we are all God, that we all, every piece of us, every moment that we enjoy is divine. So yeah, we're completely out of power. So this is actually legitimately 5 minutes for a power outage, 30 seconds is cool, whatever. 5 minutes, that means there we go. But we aren't gonna.
Yeah, I like to the lights off.
There we go.
But now everything's rebooting.
Everything's rebooting. Yeah, if that computer restarts, we're just gonna close this out. I had an idea, right? When I wanted to come here, I wanted to share 3 basic ideas: universal pattern, interdependence and relation, and symmetry and asymmetry. Pattern gives us an analytical lens through which to live life. Relation gives us the social glue. And transformation is that creative spark. Together, they form a resilient practice. Spot the structure, align with community, and break open stale paradigms to seed new innovation. And whether you're navigating a career pivot, research team, or tackling the global crises we face, I think these principles can be used universally. And it's from oneness of the community, of the cosmos, to the inner workings of minds, the expansion of understanding grounded in a few timeless axioms. The universe has been expanding for eons, and human knowledge has continued to expand, and empathy continues to grow. I believe that there's a tendency for things to get better. Yeah, if it has to reboot, then yeah, it is what it is. That's what life is. Things are going to happen. How do you deal with it? When anytime somebody lined up in a game against me, I got pretty good. And then eventually all the teams would create their entire defense against me. And what do? Do you stop? I'm not going to play. They're going to tackle me. No, you keep going. So when you look at Earth from space, there's no divisions. There's one blue marble, one planet, and we have the opportunity here to make it a great planet, a great place. And when I say we are all God, animal life, insects, they're going through it right now. Our oceans, they're going through it right now. And I think that's the thing. Do we want more stuff or a better world? Because it's starting to become a little bit mutually exclusive. So the call to action. Let's carry these principles forward. Pattern, relationship, transformation. Commit to empirical truth in your endeavors. Recognize profound interconnectedness. And remain in awe of our opportunity to be on this planet. And continually grow in mindfulness and kindness. In doing so, we become participants in the expansion of knowledge, consciousness, and unity. And this is not an end, but a beginning. But I think we can continue down this path. And it's events like this 12th International Spirituality Conference that, we had, 100 people here or so?
Well, if we count the people online that attended, it's 168.
Beautiful. And so that number should be 90 times as big. There's a lot of people in this space. I don't think people really understand how much people are struggling right now. You go downtown, actually yesterday, you guys will hate my response to this joke, but a lot of people, I was just at a networking event, and then people were talking about, what would be the last drink you had before you died? And everybody's like, I'll have this nice little Irish whiskey. Or it's like, why would I want to drink a beer before I died? Every day I walk downtown and I see people on meth, crack. I don't even know what these things are. But they would sacrifice everything for those, right? There's a crisis of spirituality. Not enough people are filled with their own spirit. They don't believe in themselves. They lose something. They would have, something fill the gap. And there's a point in time where religiosity was all you needed. But then we started, science, going down the path of science, come up with these drugs. There's always been mystical drugs, like cannabis and stuff like that have always existed, and we used them spiritually and ritually rather than the let's chase some pleasure mode that we have now. So I do think that there's an enormous need for the people like you, more than ever, because we have to have a better understanding of what's actually going on. But I did have one last thing I wanted to share, just to drop some real hard physics on y'all. Okay, my apologies, because you never know. My discipline is wide-reaching. I graduated from the University of Kansas with a Bachelor of General Studies. They let me study anything I wanted, right? Math went down those paths. Physics went down those paths. Women's studies went down those paths, right? Did it all. But the most profound thing I've ever found is sort of at the very boundary of our knowledge as human beings. So when you apply these axioms back to some of these physical principles, there's an idea called the ADS-CFT correspondence. So basically, you have an anti-de Sitter space. This is a place where there's gravity. And then you have a conformal field theory. A conformal field theory is like electromagnetism, the stuff that binds our nucleus together, a strong force, and the stuff that causes radioactivity, the weak force. Right now, in physics, they're trying really hard to put them together into a grand unified theory. Struggling. But then they came across this correspondence that they can flip from one space to another. Now, this is a math question. Anybody heard of the Langlands conjecture? So we've actually had some breakthroughs on it right here. And what it says is that basically the Fourier transform, so that's the stuff that breaks down waves into their component parts so we can actually send electronic communications. It's the same as geometry. It's the same as abstract algebra. Right? We are on the cusp of connecting so many different things. So going back to this ADS-CTF correspondence, basically it says that if I drop information, a spaceship, into a black hole, you guys know a black hole, right? Nothing can come up. The information gets encoded onto the boundary. And so when I call myself sort of a boundary condition, that's your consciousness in my mind. That you exist as a reflection of this, but you are this. And so when we talk about a holographic universe, I've started believing in a holographic consciousness where there's, like Schrodinger believed in there's a singularity of consciousness back there. But in this, it's a reflection of the universe. So that what is consciousness? Like, it is the universe. We're not separate. Our actions resonate far beyond us. And our true legacy is the transformation we inspire in others. The goal of today was to maybe just leave you with a few different pieces. I mean, I didn't know if I was going to have a lecture and tech was going to work, whatever it was. But still, thank you all so much for joining me today. It was a great exercise for me to put some of this content together. I will look forward to continuing to build on it, and I am available for any questions.
Watching a documentary the other day, and I can't remember the name of it, I have to go search for it again, but it was on brain entanglement and how they have taken people who are related, separated them, done something to someone's brain here, and this brain reacts. So when we think of consciousness, right, and we think about brains as basically as transmitters and receivers, right? And so the whole notion of consciousness and everything, the reflection of everything that's going on and how we are all entangled.
Yeah, so quantum entanglement. So I have two particles, I entangle them, right? I send this other particle to Japan and I leave this one here in Calgary. If I do a measurement, like I said, the uncertainty principle, if I do a measurement on this particle, and I know it's like an up spin, let's say, this particle in Japan will do the opposite, instantaneously. It's not faster than the speed of light, they're entangled. But the idea, it goes back to this ADS CFD correspondence, that the information is encoded at the boundary. So when you talk about action, as Einstein called it, spooky action at a distance, all of a sudden, like, there's no distance on this holographic boundary, right? There's a physical distance inside this bulk that we exist in. But that's where where we are all encoded, living in this sort of lower dimensional space. So it's super interesting, and that's where I come to a spirituality conference with something loaded with physics, because it's fractal. Like these things work down here at the physical level, and then it works at the chemical level, and then the biological level, and then the psychological, and then the sociological. Like these same principles, and we're on the verge of starting to really understand how these different levels of collective consciousness are really devolved.
You're looking at a quantum level of interaction, comparing it to a physical level, is a different term. And once cells become larger, they start to co-regulate, they regulate themselves. Mm-hmm. That autopoiesis kind of kicks in. And it's as we get into complex societies and complex physics, that self-organization is what moves forward. And I'm just thinking at the level of self-organization, does the quantum stuff hold?
No, right? So and that's where, so if we try to do something as simple as build a molecule, right? So we're talking about building one molecule, right? You can put together a hydrogen atom, many different kinds of atoms, but once the molecule size gets to 17, 18 atoms, like our math, it's just too complex for it. And so that's where the problem arises, is just the complexity of calculating it out like that, or we can do it classically, which is an easy calculation. And so as our computing power goes up, we'll be able to compute more and more of that. As we've seen with AlphaMind, where they were able to sort of crack the code on protein folding. And so when they did that, like that was a big step. But now we can go smaller, because there's a boundary there where things transition from quantum to classical. And that's like that goes beyond I'm not positing that they're the same, but I think there's some where physics is at right now, where they're searching for sort of like the next prediction, because there's no predictions outside the Higgs boson that has played out. So that, there's a crisis in physics right now, because they don't know how the quantum world sort of reconciles with our real world. Yeah. Well, beautiful. Victoria, that's good? Beautiful. 1 hour in, and I will sit down. But I do want to thank you all, because this is an opportunity I took advantage of just because I wanted to knock out some of these ideas. I know it was not a clean thing. Like, I had to desync, and sometimes I miss stuff. But I do appreciate your patience, and thank you all so much.
I just want to take a moment
Yeah.
to just honor your commitment to this, your passion, your presence, and I'm not from here, I'm from Victoria, so to learn about you as the chancellor, to see you in action yesterday, and to hear your heart-centeredness, your heartfulness, I've learned from you in many ways, and it was a great pleasure to
Thank you very much. Thank you. Much appreciated.
And I want to thank you too, because when you emailed me to say, can we talk? I was just floored that I was getting a call from the chancellor about my documents.
You aren't in trouble.
I was like, wow, the chancellor's interested. How amazing is that?
Like I said, I do help out from time to time. They met in the church. And, how do you know somebody's my mom? It's the first thing they tell you, right? So my mom will walk up to people and tell them, oh yeah, do you know Jon Cornish? Oh, you're wearing so anyways, so she had me lined up as the opener for the synod that the Anglican Church and Lutheran Church had here last year. And it was actually a great exercise for me, because there was a period of time where I was like, oh, I'm atheist. But I was much younger then. It's definitions, right? Like, oh, I don't believe it. No, it's just, you might not have the depth of understanding. But when I saw this opportunity come up, I was like, okay, well, let's see what I can add. So I so appreciated the opportunity, and tech issues being what they are, I think it's just one of those things where you just keep